Okay, brethren, I just finished a training with Elder Mullen, Brother Mullen, President Mullen, I'm not sure his title, but he's from the General Young Men's Advisory Board. It was a great training. There's some bullet points that I took away from this meeting that I feel like I need to share, and I'd like to pass along to our bishopric and to the young men's advisors and specialists. These are great leadership principles. There's 5 of them that I'd like to touch on today, and this is just something I'd like to pass along and share with each of you. I'm not sure if these will come in a very organized fashion, but just the 5 that I'd like to share. The first bullet point says here, how can we be better at using the children and youth program? And that's the spiritual, intellectual, physical, social. It's something that they just explained that it was launched in March of 2020, just as things were closing down with COVID. And as a result, there were probably some other priorities that overtook a new youth program. And now it's one that you're going to start to notice there will be more instruction and training and application of that program. With that, the thoughts and feelings I had are just the importance for each of us as individuals, as leaders and advisors, to experience these things for ourselves. For us to read through these guidebooks and to understand the principles and to be applying them personally. Ultimately, and this is the second bullet point, they said the purpose of the children and youth program, they said, is to progress along the covenant path and to allow the youth to be changed by Jesus Christ and his atonement. It says goals, activities, and topics are all parts of the program, but they are not the purpose. And that's one that really just stood out to me. And so as we strive to put into practice this new program, it was interesting. We had a discussion after the meeting was over just about how different it is. This is a new program. You know, we've gone away from scouting, and it was just interesting to hear the conversation about some of the possible divine design and the effects of having us exit from the scouting program, and then to have this time period where we've really wiped the slate clean. And I think as older priesthood holders, we remember scouting, but so much of these youth don't have much of anything to refer to. And so, especially at Deacons Camp this last week, it was interesting to see boys that just haven't had lots of camping experience and definitely not any scouting experience. And so here they are, that they need to be trained and they need to be taught, and that they won't have to replace scouting, but that they just have a blank slate and they have a willingness and a readiness to learn. And it was a very interesting conversation after the training was over. But those two components definitely go together, that the purpose of the program is to help the youth and the children of our ward progress along the covenant path, and to be changed by the atonement of Jesus Christ. As we see youth being changed, that without question, it is not just the performance of ordinances, but it is in the ordinances. It says in Doctrine and Covenants 20, the power of godliness is manifest. And it doesn't say the power of God, the power of godliness. And that's just one that really stands out to me, how important it is that we know that we are becoming godly. And if an ordinance is taking effect as it should, that we are becoming godly. So first question was, how can we better apply the children and youth program? And my counsel and advice to you advisors is to begin applying it yourselves, to read that booklet and to practice those principles. And then the second one is remembering the purpose of the activity, that it is the covenant path and being changed by Jesus Christ. The third bullet point I'd like to share with you, we are given great instruction in our Sunday lessons, and this is for young men's and young women's. I'd like to remind you that lessons are to begin with reciting the Aaronic priesthood theme and the young women's theme. It then has time allocated for discussion questions about ministering. Whoever is teaching that lesson, I know you go and sit down in a quorum or a class, and it's natural and it's great to talk about the weekend and kind of connect with them. But use that time to be your connecting time. Ask them, are we aware of who's not here, and what can we do to better minister, and what activities, let's review what took place and how people were blessed, or maybe how we can do better. But as you look through those lesson outlines, don't just connect to the doctrinal topics that you're teaching, but make sure you follow that pattern that talks about the Aaronic priesthood theme and the young women's theme, and that you're using those discussion questions in the beginning. They talked about the principles of advisors and leaders and asked, how do we as adults really minister to these boys? And what is it exactly that we are supposed to do? And we know that in the Aaronic priesthood that these boys hold keys and they've been called. It is unrighteous dominion for us to take over responsibilities that belong to these boys. It would be inappropriate for us to do things for them or to give excessive direction. But they quoted Elder Holland in this training in a statement that I'm sure many of you have heard me say and that I think about often. It is a very deep statement. It is a simple phrase, but it has so much meaning. And I feel like the years of spending time with young men in the Aaronic priesthood, it's one that year after year and experience after experience, it teaches me more of how to apply this principle from Elder Holland. And the principle that he teaches about how do we help and minister is he says, we will overestimate their experience and we will underestimate, sorry, that was backward. We will overestimate their experience and we will underestimate their experience and we'll overestimate their abilities. I think I said that backward again. But their abilities are incredible, but their experiences are very, very small. And so how is it that we help these young men in these experiences? That's super important for us to know that they do not have lots of experience. There's lots of things they don't know. It is not unrighteous dominion for us to help a boy that just doesn't know what to do because he's never been there before. To give guidance and counsel and suggest things, understand that that is where we can and should intervene. But when it comes to their abilities and for their opportunity to lean on priesthood keys and to receive revelation, these boys have an incredible sensitivity of knowing what is for the good of their quorum and understanding what is the will of the Lord and receiving revelation. So that's one that I'd like to emphasize. The other one that I thought was super interesting is they gave the analogy of one of these members of the advisory board said that he was in a weight room with a college athlete one time, and he said this wasn't long ago. He's an older gentleman, and this Olympic gold medal shot putter says to this older man, says, "Will you spot me?" And it's a woman, and she's bench pressing 350 pounds. He goes, "I can't lift that weight up." And it was interesting because she said to him, she says, "I only need your fingers. Like, if I'm just not quite able to get it up, you help me just enough," is what she said to him. And he said that's a perfect analogy for helping in the Aaronic priesthood. Help just enough. Whatever it is, that let them do as much as they possibly can, and then we will make up the rest to help them. Now with a deacon or a priest, that's going to be a different ratio. With a boy who has priesthood experience or is raised in a home with great examples in education versus someone who hasn't seen those priesthood patterns, depending on the circumstance, how much we help will be variant, but at the same time, let them do as much as they can, but our job is to help them to succeed. The last one that I'd like to share. If you will go into the gospel library, the last point, if you'll go into the topic of youth, and underneath the youth portion, there's a part that's called Help for Presidencies. And then under Help for Presidencies, I think it's the third one in, but it's leadership lessons. That's one that I didn't know existed, and they acted like it was some common thing. I've missed that one. I don't know where it came from or how I missed it, but if you look through there's 5 lessons about priesthood leadership, and they're incredible. They're really, really good. So those are ones that I'd like for our advisors to review and to be teaching our boys. We may have a formal training on it. I wouldn't count on it. This is something that, as it's passed down, I would love for you, brethren, to have access to and be the ones to own these teachings and trainings on priesthood leadership. We emphasized in our debrief after the meeting the importance of training boys is not just to hold a training. It's not just let's have a meeting and talk about these principles, but it's exemplifying and it's demonstrating and it's allowing them to practice and put into real life application these things. So I wanted to make sure that I shared with you, brethren, the things that I learned tonight. It was a great training. Hopefully this is a method that can allow you to listen and gain some of these thoughts and ideas. And one thing that the Bishop Rick and I are doing a better job on and we want to be better at is making sure that we have ways to follow up with you. So we'll try and establish a way to reach back out and to ask you, how did this go, as you teach these principles, and to follow up. Our last training that we sent out in this format was on the topic of the sacrament. I hope that all of you watched that as well, and I hope you're applying those principles. And one of the invitations we gave there is to review that every 6 months. So that's one that we'd like to follow up with and make sure that you feel like you're supported and you know, you understand the directions you're receiving. We're grateful for a prophet that guides us. He speaks very specifically and he gives us invitations. He's not heavy-handed, but with great love, he guides us. And we hope that we can replicate that pattern of giving invitations and guiding and giving support and love. We feel that our assignment in the bishopric is to support you men as you love and support these boys, and not to give quotas or, to distribute load, but hopefully that we can be there to buoy all of us up and that we can be unified as we serve and love one another. So, let me know if you have any questions on these. You can't access any of these documents, but we love you, and we'll make sure that we're training up these boys and that we're implementing these new programs, and that there's just great excitement about what is to come. But this is a new program, and these are new principles that there are instruction, there are marching orders, and I know that there's great blessings in them. So I'm excited. I felt the Spirit tonight, and I wanted to pass that along to all of you.